Okay, so like many of you, I've been spending the last few days continuously smacking enemies with the new DPS dummy feature. And today I want to focus on Nefer teams because there's been some interesting findings and I want to show you different teammate options you can play with Nefer. Specifically a pretty cool tech you can do with Diona, who is not just a healer but she's a shielder as well. So to start off with, let me just go into the DPS dummy with Sucrose and show you what a well optimized Nefer team with her signature weapon and 4-star weapons on the team can do. So let's see how high we can get it. So as you can see, I can get almost 190k DPS. Maybe I can get slightly over. That was that 5 rotations, and I get about this DPS whether I use Sucrose or Nahida. I did test Instructor on Sucrose, Deepwood on Llama. I tested all the variations, and personally I found this configuration to work the best. Let me just show you my builds quickly. This is my Nefer build. This is with her signature. These are the artifacts. And then I've got a Llama with Etherlight and a mix set, C0. Columbina with Prototype Amber and SMS set. And then Sucrose with Sac Frags and Deepwood Memories. Nahida would have the same build as Sucrose, but I get to use Favonius Codex instead. So let me show you Fav Codex Nahida with Deepwood. Yeah, pretty much I got about the same, 88 seconds there, almost 190k DPS. I think it depends on your account. For me, Sucrose and Nahida have about the same DPS, but there are some practical differences. Nahida, for example, would have better energy generation for the team. Her being Dendro would lower your requirements for these two. Plus Favonius Codex gives even more energy. So I think Nahida should be better in Stygian Onslaught and just single target fights. Whereas I think Sucrose's main advantage is in AoE, especially because Deepwood Memories can work off field, and if you didn't know, her EM share actually also can work off field. So whenever you use her burst, it means her Deepwood debuff and the EM buffs can have high duration. But with that out of the way, the main topic of this video is, what if you want more sustain than Prototype Amber? What good options do you have? First of all, I want to show you C6 Jahoda. Now the thing with Jahoda, as you'll see, is her C6 does give some very nice buffs. In fact, it's quite similar to the buffs that you'd get with Sucrose and Nahida, but Jahoda has pretty good healing on her burst. The downside is though, is she takes a while to use her skill, so she ends up extending the rotations enough to the point where you're actually losing DPS. So you can see Nefer's max hits are actually about the same. So the numbers themselves are quite good. The issue is that my DPS will be climbing quite slowly because of how long these rotations are. And I don't even have to use Nefer's burst in this team just because, again, Jahoda just takes so much field time. Make sure to use Jahoda after Columbina though, so you don't end up bricking, because you won't be able to absorb Hydra if you have Bloom on the enemies. Okay, but that's about right. So the damage is not bad and the healing is quite nice, but yeah, just the rotations are so much longer with Jahoda that the DPS itself has dropped by quite a bit. Also, to be completely honest, for my testing practically, because you have to run around so much, you can actually get staggered quite easily. In fact, with 14,000 HP, I actually die quite a lot while using her skill. Now before I show you Diona, I actually want to take Nefer's signature weapon off and go to a 4-star weapon just so we have a baseline. So I was doing almost 190k DPS with a 5-star weapon on Nefer. How much does that drop if I'm using a 4-star weapon? Let's find out. So just doing that quickly with Black Mara, I'm getting about 160,000 DPS. So let's keep that in mind as the baseline, and let's go to Diona. So this is how I'm building Diona, with a ton of energy recharge, Favonius Warbow, and then Deepwood Memories. Pretty much the same thing as how I built Jahoda. And what Diona does is her C6 gives you a lot of EM, so that's where your buffs are coming from. And then aside from that, her skill is giving you a shield and her burst is giving healing. And what the secret is for Nefer, this is the tech. You can actually use sacrificial fragments on Nefer. This will give you an extra skill charge, so instead of getting 6 charge attacks, you can actually get 9. And this works because Diona's burst actually has a long cooldown, so you have time to kill. So you have time to get those extra skills. And not only that, Diona actually helps you achieve this because she reduces Nefer's stamina consumption. So remember, with Sucrose and a 4-star weapon on Nefer, I was doing about 160,000. Let's see what we get with Diona. And Diona is getting you better healing, better shielding, and even freezing the enemies as well. You can see that I get that skill refresh, which means I can do 9 instead of 6. And this is basically only really possible because of Columbina giving you the extra verdant dues. So those final hits don't always do the most damage, but it's still basically free damage in this team. See, and there we go. I got over 152k. Not even that much weaker than Sucrose. It can get a bit awkward sometimes because of the way sacrificial fragments works. Because even at R5, it's not a 100% chance to reset your skill. From what I understand, I think the failure rate is about 4%. Also, what I did find helps is sometimes if you're having to wait for the skill to come off cooldown, I just end up using Nefer's burst and only getting 8 charge attacks, because then you can just rotate through the team anyway. But you get so much energy generation that even though Nefer's burst is really important in this team, even me just having 105 ER is still more than good enough, it seems. So originally, why not everyone was a fan of Diona is, let's say you were playing Aino before. So you do your setup, but Aino doesn't give you extra verdant dues. So not only is it a bit more clunky trying to get your 6 charge attacks here, maybe I have to wait a bit. And by the time I set up, Aino's setup is very quick. And now I have to wait on Diona's burst. But let me set up again. This time I start with 3. I still consume them very quickly though. Let's say I use Nefer's burst. Again, Aino set up very quick and doesn't give you extra dues. So here, yeah, look, you have to wait way too long. So not everyone liked that, having to wait. So maybe you use Shinobu if you wanted a bit of healing, or maybe you just played no sustain at all. So Diona is still providing the same things as she is in the old teams, but in the old teams you were getting really punished with this long burst cooldown being 20 seconds. Now, because Columbina gives you 3 extra dues for your Nefer to use up, the new teams can take a lot of field time, which means this cooldown being so long is not as much of an issue. Plus, Diona even helps you use that much field time because she reduces your stamina consumption. So is Diona going to be as much DPS as Sucrose or Nahida? No, but she definitely got a lot better this patch. So this got me thinking, because the Diona team kind of really benefits from sacrificial fragments, what if instead of getting Nefer's signature, what if you got Nefer's C1 instead? Now conveniently, Nefer's C1, it can be very similar to the signature. So in the training dummy, I can actually add substats onto Nefer directly to try and replicate the value of the C1. I won't be able to get it exactly. I'm giving myself 2 crit rates and 7 crit damage substats. Now I might have undershot it, I might have overshot it, but at least you can test this kind of thing, at least roughly in the DPS dummy. So remember, I was getting almost 190k with Sucrose and Nahida with Nefer's signature weapon. Now how much would I get with the C0R1 Nefer and Diona? The damage is a lot higher now because I'm trying to get a fake C1 basically. Now you do have to try and animation cancel very quickly, because if you're doing 9 charge attacks, obviously it's going to be more important that you can animation cancel them as quick as possible compared to the normal teams when you only have to do 6. So now, because I'm having to wait for the skill, I think it's better to just do like 2 here. So you can see, although I can't get to 190k, I mean, in 126 seconds, we got almost to 180k. So to state the obvious, you're not going to get as much damage with a proper sustain as you will playing Sucrose or Nahida with Prototype Amber Columbina. But there is a way to get pretty close. And I do like how Diona seems to synergize really well with this. But it seems Diona can give you higher damage than a C6 Jahoda. And on top of that, if you was thinking about vertically investing, whilst Nefer's weapon is good, Nefer's C1 can be similar, but also Nefer's C1 can let you be a bit more flexible in regards to Nefer's weapons. And this is a nice tech. So me personally, I found this quite interesting to find out, because even though I do consider Prototype Amber as pretty decent sustain, sometimes I don't want to fully sweat it out and I do want an actual proper sustain. So let me know if you found this quite interesting to learn. Again, you do need to become very good at animation cancelling. So if you aren't animation cancelling, then Diona is going to perform relatively a lot worse than what I got. But anyway, that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed.